Hi, wowsoloist here, and this is my top 5 plus loose plot threads in WoW. These are my 5 biggest loose ends in BFA and the end of Legion. So there's more than 5, but I've managed to group them to keep this shorter. These are things that I would think Blizzard would like to tie up in future plot lines, so spoilers ahead. Guide yourselves accordingly. Number 1, the big effing sword. Okay, like ultimate loose end here, how long are they just leaving this thing around? It's been here an entire expansion plus a bit now already, and we're still frankly no closer to fixing this. We've played with the power leaking out from this wound, blood of Azeroth the Titan maybe, and it's a mix of like golden and blue and a crackling black with silver sparks, energies that can control Titan facilities, open Titan locks for an old god prison, and frankly it looks like it contains bits of light energy, blue for maybe arcane, frost even, and of course the dark void or shadow or undead magic or other kind of wisps. So it's a combination of all these things, but we still don't even really know what it is fully. It's a waste of a key plot engine if it waits until 10.0 to be resolved. So despite dragging you there every emissary, every paragon for champs, and every essence install and key Azerite forge levels, people have basically forgotten about this big sword from a story arc. It's become part of the scenery. That shouldn't have happened. It and Silithus should have undergone some changes from patch to patch during BFA to keep it relevant and threatening, not just old home week at the Forge. Spoilers, right? We use Azerite in the Forge also to attack N'Zoth. We don't know if by defeating N'Zoth this way, did we kill him or drive him off? Did we put him in the Shadowlands somehow with some Azerite booster? Remember the original leak of Shadowlands, the map had Nyalotha at the center, not Orbos and the Arbiter. And so that might be a big difference. It could be a hint that they changed things up and moved up Nyalotha to 8.3. And so there should be links to this sword in the next X pack. But another interesting thing from that particular Shadowlands map originally is it had all the dead night elves, sadly, from the tree, but that also had all the dead Tauren from Thunder Bluff. And so it looks to me like 8.25 and 8.3 were maybe the Siege of Thunder Bluff, and the reason 8.25 had no content other than cinematics is that it was removed because it would have caused a horrific mess if they had left that in. That was an error in judgment. So I think they had to remove it and are adapting the Shadowlands and 8.3 as they go along. And I think that's probably why the Shadowlands seems to have an undefined end date because they've moved stuff forward. So anyway, point number 2. Xal'atath, the remaining undefeated old god. That's sort of a serious loose end. If she's as Lovecraftian as she appears, if she's Ny'alotha, then she can wander the world and the universe in various humanoid and other Warcraft races' shapes, and she could be a very nasty influence. She's been everywhere with players throughout Legion and before as Knaifu. She knows and understands the Warcraft universe and its people really well. And she's commented on their motivations from her own twisted sense a lot of times. And she has the powers of an old god, like that black and void purple smoke thing going on. She could even impersonate Sylvanas. Oh, wait, got a separate video on that. Why would she have picked a void elf, which is a blood elf, which is basically Sylvanas's people? Interesting. Anyway, so far, the jailer looks more like a creature related to void and shadow, and several people have pointed out, despite its large size, it has the arms that look like a female human or elf or undead human. But actually, in the leak that came out afterward, he looks like Amanthal's slightly younger brother. But Xal'atath herself, she has to be the biggest plot spoiler other than the sword out there and the biggest loose end. Number 3, the Red Star. The seat of the Pantheon, the shades of the Titans, defeated Sargeras, Illidan, dead Argus maybe. Afrasiabi said last year in an interview, if the Red Star ever goes away, it would be a bad thing. This story arc's far from settled, and it still pulses with what-if energy. Related to the sword, loose end number 1, it's easiest to have Sargeras remove it, as who else can? And so Sargeras has probably got further plot arc to go. Illidan obviously tagging behind him, most likely. And what happens with the remaining Titans, and is Argus really done? Does he pop up in the Shadowlands? Interesting. So that's number 3. Number 4, Zira and her pieces, and Illidan the Chosen One. So Illidan gets a second appearance in this one. What is he chosen for? Did we ever really find out that what he was chosen for? I don't think so. And then this one I can lump a couple of other loose ends, because we also have Sara and Kalia. We have Lura and Illyria. And these are all very interesting because you have Zira, the prime Naru, the mother of all the light Naru, but her heart core was destroyed, and she was pieced together with a heart core from, I believe, one of her sons. And so is that really Zira the way she was before? Or is this some of her son's experience and personality in there as well? This whole piece, I think I'd do a whole video on, because to me, it's a much more complex situation than most or a lot of the forums made it out to be. It's not just a free will situation at all. I mean, Illidan is far, far from your average person, far from a uncorrupted, trustworthy, non-cynical creature. And Zira, in her attempt to give him the blessing of turning him back to the Chosen One and purification, might have thought that this was something that anyone would want. Clearly, Illidan was too far gone for that. But and also felt that, he wanted to keep his memories and scars of who he had become. But there's something a lot more to that. We've never seen a Naru blasted into little smidgens before. Zira's been fighting the Burning Legion for how long? And yet the worst they were able to do was knock her heart core out. The rest of her was intact. But Illidan, with one eye sweep, was able to blow her into a gazillion bits, which we then gathered up and put with some shadow stuff in the Netherlight Crucible. I mean, there's nothing there that could go wrong. But with Zira in a million pieces, is that the end of that, or do those pieces wind up somewhere? And was Illidan the chosen one because he was chosen to end Zira or blast her into those million bits that maybe wind up somewhere? So that's an interesting one. The reason I think all 3 of these Naru pairings are interesting is you have the prime light Naru, supposedly uncorrupted, other than that heart piece swap, and Illidan, who's a very corrupted one. Then we have Sara, who was a light Naru, turned into a void god, a dark Naru, turned back again into a purplish sort of light Naru, and Kalia, whom she raised as some weird, unusual, and creepy looking light undead. And then we have Lura, who went to the dark side, who was a void god for thousands of potentially of years, and Illyria, who has been playing with the void, who gets forcefully merged, if you want, with Lura, sort of forcefully merges her energies into Illyria and disappears. And so it's almost what Zira was trying to do with Illidan. but from the opposite end of the cosmology spectrum. So I think these three are very related, and the answers that will eventually come are probably related as well. All right, number 5. Elune and Tyrande, Azeroth and Magni. Yeah, we could even add in Azshara and maybe some shade of N'Zoth or Xal'atath or whatever, wandering around out there somewhere. But Elune, the nature of Elune is one of the biggest loose ends in World of Warcraft. What is she? And obviously Tyranda's links, which Chandris talks to her about in 8.3 about not turning fully to the dark side, to the vengeance side, that Elune has a dark side but also a light side, and that Tyrande should redevelop her light side, and so that she would have both. But Tyrande is not having it at this point, and or the peace between the factions either. Azeroth, as a Titan, what is her status? What's going to become of her? Um, is she like her namesake, or going to wind up like her namesake in the Lovecraftian universe, which is sort of actually um, the the sleeping, brain dead creature, brain damaged creature who, in their dreams the entirety of reality into being, and so Cthulhu, who is the main priest to that entity, is keeping it asleep and dreaming so it doesn't wake up and end everything. Uh, so that's, and then Azeroth, of course, is named after that. So it's a very interesting um, plot line going forward, and Magni is definitely tied to her as well. So I would think that number 3, the Red Star, and the Zira, Sara, Lura, Lyria, all of that, and probably the Azshara, wherever she is, I would see that referenced in the next X Pack, as they involve things that are supposedly dead. And I think also Elune is going to get more play or more explanation, and the Azeroth as well piece in, because it relates to the cosmology that they're going for. But have a feeling maybe that one might linger into X-Pac 10. So anyway, WoW Solo is signing out for now, and it'll be interesting to see how these loose ends tie themselves up.